Alright, the opening footage that you saw is from the Lagunitas Brewery in Petaluma, California. It's about a 40 to 60 minute drive from San Francisco, and it's actually in the opposite direction of Lucky Chances, which I'll explain at the end of the video. In this one, I'm kicking up the stakes and playing 5-10 with an agreed upon $20 straddle from the under the gun position. I buy in for $3,500, and in the first notable hand, I raise a 60 from the cutoff with pocket 10s. Small blind and straddler call, and we take a flop 3 ways, which comes king 9-3, all red. Checks to me, and given the somewhat wet board texture, I put out a larger continuation bet of 140. Only the small blind calls, and we go heads up to the 8 of hearts on the turn, which puts up additional draws. Small blind checks, and while I could check back for some pot control, I opt to keep betting, this time for 360. I will run into some king X on occasion, but it feels like a reasonable bet for value / denial, particularly given the multitude of draws available. And after some deliberation, small blind decides to rip for 1,415 effective. Definitely did not anticipate this play, but my initial inclination is to call for the aforementioned reason about this board being draw heavy. I do think it through for some time though. My read is that I don't think my opponent is jamming a single pair of kings for value, so I'm ruling that out, although of course I could be wrong. But that leaves hands like king 9 suited, king 8 suited, pocket 9s, and pocket 3s for value. I'm ruling out 8-9 suited and pocket 8s mainly because it's hard to call a flop bet with those hands without backdoors. For example, the only real 8-9 combo that can comfortably call a flop bet is 8-9 of hearts, which isn't possible given the 8 of hearts on the turn. Lastly with 10s, I do take away some straight draws that my opponent can have, but having black 10s is relevant here since I don't have removal to combo draws. Anyhow, after going deep into the tank, I go with my gut that she's drawing and put in the call. The river comes a deuce of hearts, so not the best card as a backdoor draw completes, and my opponent tables pocket kings for top set. Yeah, that was the last hand I expected to run into given the action, and this only being a single raised pot. I often mention the word deception in my vlogs, and as a fan of Magic, I definitely got Houdini'd in this one. I decided to add on for 1,500, and playing 6-handed, I get dealt a7 offsuit in the straddle. Cutoff raises to 60, the blinds call, I put in the additional 40 to close the action, and we go 4 ways to 10-9-8 with a diamond draw. Checks to the cutoff who puts out a large c-bet of 220. I begin contemplating a raise once it gets back to me, since I can represent a variety of strong hands given my position, holding a 7, and not having any diamonds. After small blind folds though, that thought quickly dissipates as big blind raises to 600. I get out of the way, and the cutoff tank calls. To finish the hand, the turn comes a king of diamonds, and surprisingly, action checks through. River comes an offsuit deuce, and action checks through once again, and the cutoff table is a winning hand with ace-10 offsuit. So yeah, kind of an anticlimactic finish to the hand, but shortly after, I pick up another offsuit holding in the form of king 9. Small blind raises to 60, and I defend from the straddle. We go heads up to queen 9-6 with 2 hearts and a spade, giving me second pair and backdoor possibilities. Small blind checks, and I take the green light and bet 60. Small blind check calls, and force 3 comes a 5 of hearts, completing both straight and flush draws. Small blind checks again, and I continue with another bet, this time for 120. It's a bit thin, but I think there are enough targets available, namely Jack 10, 10-8, weaker 9x, some pocket pairs, and some ace-x with the ace of hearts. Small blind calls again, and the river comes a brick. After small blind checks, I decide to just take my showdown, and my hand is no good as small blind turns over queen 10 of diamonds. I value own myself a bit in this one, as my stack dwindles down to 2,700 off a total buy-in of 5,000, and needing some help to recover, I pick up ace-king offsuit from under the gun, and raise to 60. I get a boatload of callers as the low jack, cutoff, and blinds call. We take a flop 5 ways, which comes 6-6-4 with a diamond draw. The blinds check, and while I have all over pairs in range, I don't have the nut advantage on this board, meaning that I have fewer 6x and pocket 4s than my opponents. That in mind, I think I'm relegated to checking here more often than not, and that's what I do. Action actually checks through, and the turn comes with 3 of clubs, and this time small blind leads for 160. Big blind calls, and I think I speak for many that this isn't the type of 5-way action that gets people excited. I think there's another 2 for that, and while it's soft to play on a cornucopia in this way, it goes in the muck, and with roughly 2,600, the next significant hand develops when I'm holding pocket 7s in the big blind. It folds to the small blind who raises to 60, and being monkey in the middle, I play this one aggressively via a 3-bet to 200. The straddler doesn't think that is enough, as he puts in a 4-bet to 650. Small blind folds, and quite a few thoughts running through my head. Given the configuration and action, the straddler has a lot of advantageous options. He can flatten play in position, or he can further leverage the situation through aggressive action, which is what he's done here. The straddler seems to be very good, so as opposed to assigning him a tight range of aces through queens, I think he can have a variety of Broadway holdings, some suited connectors, and some ace wheel combinations. That in mind, I'm not in the mood to fold sevens and put in the additional 450. We go heads up to a flop which comes 8-6-5 with 2 spades and a diamond, so aside from flopping 3 of a kind, this is a pretty gin flop. I check, and the straddler puts out a down C bet of 480. My hand pretty much plays itself on this board, so with roughly 2k effective, I rip and would be happy to take it down by denying against unpaired overcards, or perhaps garner a hero fold from weaker overpairs, namely 10s and jacks. In either case, it's nice to have a straight draw as a backup plan, and while my opponent doesn't seem too pleased with the situation, he sticks it in the middle, so I'm going to need that plan B to come through, or else I'm going to be stuck a ton of $5 footlongs. Channeling some Galfon run good like the end of his first challenge, we decide to run it once, and I hit a miracle on 4th Street with a 4 of spades giving me a straight. The river comes another 4, I table the 7s, and take down the largest pot I think I've captured on the vlog, in a spot where I got very lucky against an overpair, but shout out to my opponent for taking the beat in stride, and shortly after getting out of Stuck City, we decide to play a $40 bomb pot, and I'm in the small blind with ace deuce of diamonds. The flop comes jack 10-6 giving me the nut flush draw, so it looks like the session may be turning around. Action checks through, and I pick up a gutter on the turn with the king of hearts. Given my position, I decided to check again, as betting and getting raised in this particular spot would be pretty unfortunate. Looks like no one is interested in betting though, and the river comes a queen of diamonds, so a great card as it gives me the flush where both an ace and a 9 make straights. I consider checking, but I decide to bet 200 to get value from an ace. It folds around to the button, who just calls, indicating that he doesn't have one of the 2 hands that has me beat. My opponent surprisingly tells me that he too has a flush, so kudos to him for reading me like a book. And after a couple of small back and forth hands, I get my stack to 5,800 and play one more significant hand of the session, holding pocket kings in the straddle. We are playing 4-handed, and it folds to the big blind who raises to 70. My opponent is playing about 2,500 effective, and I repop to 210. Big blind isn't in the mood to call or fold, as he 4-bets to 760. Pretty good situation developing here, unless he has aces and it's a super cooler. Nevertheless, I decide to feint some weakness instead of 5-bet jam, since that typically looks pretty strong. The flop comes queen 4-4 with a club draw, so not exactly the best flop, since if I wasn't cooler against aces, I'm now losing to queens. Big blind proceeds with a down C bet of 400, I call, and 4th Street comes a 7 of hearts, putting up another flush draw. After a bit of deliberation, big blind jams for 1470. Pretty crappy spot, as my instincts tell me that he has it.
Sorry, give me a second.
The problem is that kings is one of the best hands that I'll ever have in this spot, so folding is bad in that sense, but after some painful tanking, I convinced myself that he has enough ace queen and draws to call, so I put in the 1470. My opponent wants to run it twice, so I roll with it as he tables ace 4 offsuit for the better hand, but not in the way that I expected. The first river comes a 3 of spades, so no help there, and the second river comes the 9 of clubs to solidify the entire pot going to my opponent. Pretty tough way to end a fairly roller coaster situation on this Friday evening, and I hop into this game again on the following Friday. I didn't vlog it, but I've got one notable hand to share when we're playing 5-handed, and I raise to 60 from the cutoff with pocket 8s. Button calls, and big blind re-raises to 240. Only I call, and we go heads up to 8-7-5 with a diamond draw, and giving me the effective nuts. Big blind checks, and on this board texture that favors me, I bet 260. Big blind check calls, and the turn comes a 6 of hearts, completing 2 one-liners. After big blind checks, I don't expect him to have too many 9s or 4s, so I can comfortably keep betting on this board texture. Obviously it's a value bet here with top set, but let's say I have a diamond draw or decide to turn a hand like 10s or 8x into a bluff. This is a good spot to leverage, and I fire 700. And after some time to tank, big blind calls, and the river comes a king of clubs. Big blind checks, and this is not the ideal card for a couple of reasons. One, my targets have slimmed down to aces, and ace king of diamonds, as a hand like queens and jacks may find hero call should I bet. And 2, the The worst case scenario is that I now lose to pocket kings. It's also a bit hard to explain, but in game, something just didn't feel right when this river peeled off, so I ended up making the check back expecting to knit roll my opponent. That is until he tables pocket kings for the river top set. For those of you that question if this hand really happened since I don't have video footage, I promise that I'm not making this up, and my table mates that tuned into the vlog can also vouch for me. But yeah, that was a pretty tough beat to take. But before I go into the results though, I just have one more enjoyable hand to share when two of the regulars at this 5-10-20 game decide to put in $800 each blind and run it.
King. Okay, I'm open hand, okay. King. Oh my god, you open one. Oh, you small, you open.
The player on the left ends up taking it down with king high, and if there's a lesson to be had in this one, just like how you never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line, never bet against an Asian when gambling's on the line.
They got gambling problems.
Alright, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Let's jump into the bad news first. In the initial 5-10 session, bought in for $3,500, added on for $1,500, and ultimately cashed out $3,098. So book a loss there of $1,902. Then played the 5-10 again the following week. Bought in for an odd amount of $3,480. Some of that was carryover from the 3-5 game. And ran that stack up to around $5,200, $5,300. Was up around $1,800 at the peak in that session and started to dwindle down towards the end of the session. And I shared with you the pocket kings hand that ultimately depleted all of the profits. So got out of that one for $3,262. So book a loss of $218. And so back-to-back losing sessions in the 5-10 no limit. Again, keep the streak alive, unfortunately, in terms of losses on this vlog. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the positives though. You caught a lot of the February and how that went, specifically with how the Peppermill vlog went. That was a huge loss, and that took place in February. And that was a pretty rough month, but March was actually pretty good in terms of poker. A lot of that I did not capture on the vlog, unfortunately. Just was focused on playing and just trying to get back into the videos now. But aside from that, the reason you saw the Lagunitas Brewery in the beginning of the video was actually because this vlog was supposed to be at Grayton Resort and Casino, which is in Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, that area, and it's about like a 15-minute drive from Petaluma. I got to the Petaluma Brewery, did all that stuff with Cindy, and then when I went to Grayton, I ended up entering I don't remember what the buy-in was, but it was a tournament at Grayton. It was evening on Thursday, and it was 104 players. That part I do remember, and ultimately finished in the final four. There was a proposal to chop when we were 9 or 10 handed, and I didn't really want to be an asshole about it, but I was one of the few, if not the only, that said to keep playing, and we ended up keep going. I just wanted to continue to kind of build experience because making a final table doesn't really happen that often. And ultimately, once we got down to 4-handed, blinds were so high that another proposition or proposal was made to chop. So took it, and we all got I got $1,755 plus some bounty money. So ended up netting a profit of $1,855. So that's the positive. I didn't capture that on the vlog per se, but wanted to share that here. And aside from that, I've got the upcoming meetup game at Ace and Vine in Napa, California on Thursday, April 28th. 3 p.m. start time. Sign up via the Poker Atlas app. All of that information is in the description box below. And I'm actually on my way out to play in a home game tonight, and I plan to vlog it. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.